The latest Halo Infinite flight is here and the game is looking better than ever. And speaking of looking better than ever, today we're going to be going over the best settings for the game to boost your FPS and increase your visibility. Hey everyone, it's FourEyes Dave here, welcome back to another video. Today we are finally playing Halo Infinite. I'm so excited to play this game. Halo is one of my, as well as many other people's, favourite franchises, and I've honestly not been too impressed with some of the last Halo games that we've had, really since Halo Reach was my last good Halo game that I enjoyed, and to now have a full feature-filled PC Halo experience, I am excited. I didn't get the chance to play the last flight when it came to PC. I don't think I missed out too much. I think there was a lot of optimization issues, but having jumped into this preview today, I can definitely say that the game is running a lot better than what I saw last time. Now, as of the time of recording this, you can't actually play the multiplayer, but I've been spending quite a bit of time today running around in the practice bots area, getting a feel for the game, and the focus of this video, playing around with the settings and trying to figure out all the best settings across the board to get this game running to its full potential. Now, before we jump into this video today, I hope that you guys do enjoy it, and if you do, make sure that you subscribe for more videos in the future. We cover all sorts of topics over here. Halo Infinite is definitely going to be a big one that we cover because the game is looking to be very, very good. Also, leave a like and a comment below. If you want to get a discussion going, I'm always there to try and answer questions about anything you want to ask. So yeah, leave a comment down below. So here we are in the training area. I've got rid of all the bots for this because we don't want random bots running around trying to kill us while we just stand up here and play around with some settings. What I will say, just as a kind of disclaimer before we jump into these settings, there is a slight bit of stutter to the game. I'm assuming that's just because we're still in that test flight. Even just moving around, like, it's really smooth and it feels really nice, this game, but there's this slight bit of stutter, and I haven't been able to solve that, but I've been able to kind of limit it and make the game feel as good as it can using the settings I'm going to show you guys today. So let's have a quick jump in and open up these settings. There's also an annoying flash that happens when you're on the settings menu, and I can't get rid of that either, so unfortunately you're going to have to deal with that as we go through these. So I'm not going to be covering controller settings because I don't play with a controller. I know a lot of people do, but you're going to have to go elsewhere and find some controller settings if you want to have a look at that. We're going to jump straight to the mouse and keyboard settings. I'm going to cover a few things in here. I don't use anything in terms of inverting look. I don't think anyone should unless you're an absolute crazy fool. Hold to crouch. I prefer to have my crouch and toggle because sometimes I want to stay crouched for a long time, don't want to have to keep the button held down. Whereas for zoom and sprint, I definitely prefer to have these on hold. Zoom is good for when you have a sniper, so if I just go grab a sniper from the center of the map here. Oh, it's the skewer. I thought there was a sniper on this map. So, but this has a zoom anyway, so it will work just the same. This gun's awesome, by the way. This hit scan, just one shot, is awesome. I much prefer the standard hold the button to zoom in, release the button to zoom out. That works better for me. If you're a classic Halo fan, you might prefer to do the kind of click and whatever, but it's personal preference. Then for sprinting, I think you get a lot more control having to hold it down, because then I can basically hold down the button, release the button, stop sprinting. I can kind of start and stop my sprint a lot. There's just a lot more control, and I always value having full control over simplicity. So yeah, I'd recommend you go for that. Let's pick up this commando because this gun is far too big to have on our screen for the whole time. Oh god, I fell down. Let's go around again, and we'll jump back into more of these settings. So next up, continuing down the keyboard and mouse, ones I would talk about, auto clamber. I like to keep this on. I did just talk about control, and I actually tried turning this off, where it means that if you want to climb up on top of each something, like if I want to jump on top of this box, right now it automatically climbs up. And I found that keeping it on is actually just better, because there isn't that many times where I've accidentally mantled, and having that automatic mantle is just overall very, very useful. So I would definitely keep that on. The other thing I would recommend turning off, and this has been a very controversial topic, is mouse magnetism, which says it sets whether to have the mouse slightly stay with targets while firing. This basically sounds like mouse and keyboard aim assist, which is just mind-boggling. But I've tried this out, and you do feel it a little bit, like a slight bit of magnetism, and technically it might mean that some shots land a bit more, but I would recommend that you keep this off as a mouse and keyboard player, because you get much more raw input when it comes to your mouse movement. What you do with your mouse is what happens in game, and I feel like having this on is just taking away that control that you get from having a mouse and keyboard. You might randomly land a shot that you might not have landed, but I think overall throughout all of your fights, having this off is going to be better, and I know a lot of people on Reddit have said the same thing, so I would recommend you keep this off. Other things in here, mouse sensitivity. Try and pull over your mouse sensitivity from another game and get it working in here. That'd be a good idea. I keep my vertical and horizontal scales at 1:1. Wouldn't recommend changing those. Magnification, you can come in here and change your magnification sensitivity. So you can set your 1.4 times sensitivity. You can set your 6 times sensitivity. I keep these all 1:1 at the moment. I haven't played enough of the game, and I'm not going to give recommendations on those. Mouse acceleration, keep it off. It's not something you want to use. Mouse acceleration means the quicker you move your mouse, the quicker you basically spin in game, the higher sensitivity you feel like you have. We don't want that. We want that raw input, so we keep mouse acceleration off. And I'm not going to cover keybinds today. That might be a separate video, or I would just say it's personal preference for keybinds for every game. Next, let's go to the video settings, probably what a lot of you guys are here for. Field of view. The game starts you off at 78 FOV, which is so just awful. Like, moving around like this is terrible. Number one, it gives me motion sickness. Number two, you can see so little. So a lot of people would just say, well, turn this all the way up. We can go all the way up to 120. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. You get so much FOV, the game just feels better. You feel like you're moving around the map quicker. The only thing, or I guess two things, that is bad about having a high FOV. Number one, there's more on your screen, so there's more to render in. So it actually does potentially lower FPS a little bit. But the bigger thing is actually that targets become a lot smaller. If you imagine, for example, that this little marking on this wall down here is an enemy. Look how small it is. Like, if I want to kind of get onto the target, it's quite a small target to hit. Whereas if I were to bring that FOV down, to example, well, I mean, we wouldn't want to go this low, but let's go all the way down to 65. Now look how big that target is. It's so simple. It's such a simple target to hit. So I've always been an avid fan of sitting around 110. I feel like I get all the benefits of 120. I don't ever feel like that last bit of FOV either side is that useful. So 110 is what I would recommend, but there's nothing wrong with going up to 120. Okay, let's try flying through some of these. Display adapter, make sure this is set to your GPU. Display monitor, you'll know your game's on the right monitor because you're looking at it. Interestingly, there is no exclusive full screen in this game at the moment. You can either have borderless full screen or a resizable window. I'm not playing in a window, God no, so I just play with borderless full screen. Hopefully there'll be some way of running it in exclusive full screen, although, to be honest, with more and more games kind of moving into the future, borderless is actually just as good as full screen, so it probably won't make much of a difference. Resolution scale, put this to 100%. I wouldn't recommend that you turn this up any more than 100%. You're just super sampling for really no reason. If you have real problems with the game, you can turn this down and get lower resolution, but that's really a last resort. So keep it 100. Minimum frame rate. This doesn't really ever play into the game for me because I never drop to 60. What this does is basically if the game was ever to drop below 60, it would lower the resolution dynamically to keep the game above what you set as your minimum. So it's a cool thing to have because at the end of the day, you don't want to be dropping down to some crazy low frame rate. Potentially, if you were having loads of problems, you could set this at something like, I don't know, 80. But on a solid system, I've just left it at 60. It's not really going to make much difference. Maximum frame rate, I've got it unlocked. It says lower the target frame rate for a more consistent frame rate and a smoother experience. I would recommend you just keep it unlocked because you want to just be getting the most frames you can. VSync and limit inactive frame rate. I keep both of these off. VSync especially, it adds a lot of latency for eliminated screen tearing, but really once you hit some high FPSs, once you're at like 144 Hertz or above, VSync is not that useful anyway. G-Sync, if you've got it, potentially you can then use G-Sync with VSync, but that's another topic that we're not going to cover at the moment. Into the graphics settings, quality preset doesn't matter because we're going to change the things below it and it's going to change it. Anti-aliasing, this is a really, really interesting one. So anti-aliasing, it reduces jagged edges of objects. If you have this on lower, then you get much more jagged edges. I put this on high and I got better FPS and less jagged edges. I'm confused why. I have no idea why. Also, the anti-aliasing in this game, I'm not sure what kind of anti-aliasing it's using, it's a very, very good quality anti-aliasing. I'll say that for sure. Because it's not blurry in any way. There is a sharpening filter, which I'll talk about towards the end of the video settings, but I would just recommend you shove this on high. It honestly plays really, really well. Texture filtering, as well as texture quality, I put these both on medium. These really aren't going to have too much of an effect on FPS unless you have very low-end graphics cards. I'm talking like less than 2 gig of VRAM. I don't see a huge amount of FPS change going around like the medium to high level, so I just keep them on medium, both of these, just so I get like slightly crisp textures, but I don't have too much almost like visual noise of like really, really in detail textures all around. Ambient occlusion, this is all about... It says it improves the accuracy of screen space ambient occlusion. So it doesn't really explain what the hell it means. Ambient occlusion is sort of if you have like layered objects and you have that slight kind of shading and shadows around objects, it's meant to make that look better. It's really not that useful for getting a competitive edge. It's also quite costly in a lot of games. I haven't seen it be that costly in Halo Infinite so far, but I would still recommend you keep it on low because it could be something where you run into a certain room or a certain area, ambient occlusion really kicks in, you start losing frames for very little reason, so keep this on low. Geometry quality. This is the detail for objects at further distances, and it's meant to reduce pop-in. I haven't seen this make that much effect in this game, so I've kept it on medium because reducing pop-in is good, especially for playing some of the big team battle maps. I know that's coming out with this test, so I will play around with this setting a bit more when we're on some of the bigger maps, but on maps like this, which are fairly small, I mean, you've got these areas outside, but we don't really care about things that are outside the map too much. It doesn't make much of a difference, so I've kept it on medium. It doesn't seem to affect your FPS that much anyway. Reflections, keep them off. We don't need them. It just adds high resolution things to your screen that you don't need, so get rid of them. Depth of field, shadow quality, and lighting quality, low, low, and low. Depth of field isn't something we care about anyway. I'm surprised you can't turn depth of field off, although I haven't really seen many depth of field effects happening in the game, so I've just kept this on low. Shadows are a hog, and low quality shadows in this game still look pretty good. In certain games, I will actually keep these on medium because the shadows on low just look so bad. But honestly, low shadows look fine in this game, and you gain a solid amount of FPS from having them lower. Lighting quality, it's similar to shadow quality. Basically, the lighting's still good when you have it on low and you gain FPS. Volumetric fog and cloud quality, you want to put these both to the lowest settings, especially volumetric fog to off. This is an FPS killer and a visibility killer. It adds this kind of fogginess to areas on the map to make the game look more realistic and more kind of cool. And maybe if you're playing through the single player campaign, go ahead, turn these kind of settings up. But if you're playing multiplayer and you're trying to get better visibility and you're meant to be trying to dominate enemies, keep this off. Cloud quality, as I just said, low. This affects the volumetric clouds, which we've turned off anyway, so it probably won't matter what you set this to. I'm just going to quickly fly down all these. Ground cover quality, dynamic wind. This is just how wind affects like trees and stuff. Makes the game look more realistic. Keep it low. The same with ground cover quality, which is foliage and stuff. We don't care about it, so we want this low. Effects quality. This one is probably one I want to test. Lower quality disables non-essential effects, so it specifically says that anything that's essential, like I guess like explosions and stuff, that's all kept no matter how low you keep this. Because of that, I've put this on low, because in some games I've known that you turn effects to low and it gets rid of things which you actually need to see. But it says that it keeps everything you need to. It's only non-essential stuff we lose. We'll have to test that, but for now, keeping it on low. Decal quality, or decal. These are things like bullet holes, scorches, the tire tracks, footprints. I keep these on low. Maybe there'll be some reason to keep them higher so you can see footprints and track people, but in general, it's something that's being rendered into your screen that you don't need, so we're going to keep it low. Animation quality, you can either set this to auto or max. I'd recommend you just keep it on auto because it bases the quality on your CPU. If you put this on max, you might run into some FPS issues. And the animation quality is for smoothness of character animations, and it doesn't affect the animations for your character. It's just for other characters. It's not going to make much of a difference to you having enemy animations look a bit weird. You're not really looking at that kind of stuff anyway. Keep it on auto. If you've got a good CPU, you'll have good animations. If your CPU starts faltering for any reason or it's just not very good, then it will adjust to keep your FPS high. Okay. Terrain quality, simulation quality, and flocking quality. I love that there is a setting for the quality of simulated flocks of birds. Why? Keep it on low. Low, low, and low. I'm not even going to go into the details of these. We just do not need any of these kind of things on higher than low for a competitive edge. Async compute. I had to read into this one because I really didn't know much about it. I could just sit here and be like, do this because this, but I looked it up. It says, as it says on the right, set whether to execute compute work in parallel with graphics work on GPUs that support it. I've read a lot on Reddit that this is not that useful, especially when running in full screen. I'm going to do some more testing on this, but all the gurus say to keep this off at the moment. It's not all that good. Maybe with some improved drivers coming to NVIDIA and AMD GPUs, we might see some more use out of this. But right now, doesn't really improve the game at all, so keep it off. Shader quality, I keep these on medium. Shaders are basically the kind of processes that render in parts of the game. I'm going to be honest, I don't know a huge amount about this setting, but I've kept it on medium because it makes me feel better to just have it one above low. Honestly, just going to be honest there. So play around with this setting. I'd keep it on medium. Sensory. Blur, screen shake, explosion, and full screen effect. I keep them all on 0 just to run through them. Blur is obviously just as you sprint and stuff, the screen blurs. We don't want that. It just covers up. It reduces visibility. Screen shake, once again, as you move around, there's explosions, your screen shakes. You can't see things. It's bad. Exposure and full screen effect. So when you have certain effects happen, like you pick up an overshield, the edges of your screen distort and stuff like that. This is all stuff which just ruins visibility. It adds the immersion. So once again, if you're playing single player, you can turn these on, but for multiplayer, God no, turn them off. Speed lines is like the rest of the ones before. As you run around, these are actually quite funny. If I turn these on and I start sprinting, you might not be able to see them, but you see these you see these lines. They're actually quite cool. They do look like, these are something which, if you like them, keep them on, but this is a video about keeping visibility high, and therefore the extra stuff should be got rid of. Sharpening. This is really cool that they add a little sharpen filter in the game. This doesn't seem to affect FPS. I thought it was going to be some post-processing that affected the FPS, but it really doesn't. So I would recommend, for me, just keeping sharpening at 60%. The default is good enough. Some people might like to turn it all the way up to 100 and get a really sharp game. I'm probably going to play around with this and see what works out best for me, but for now, I'm just going to stick it at 60 because the game looks sharp enough and not overly sharp at this setting. So I'm just going to stick with that. That is all the video settings, I believe. So let's have a quick run through the last 3 stages: audio, UI, and accessibility. There isn't too much to cover here. Audio is very personal preference. You can maybe turn off music if you don't like them, turn them off, the volume down so you don't blow your ears out. I've had to do. Dynamic range, I would highly recommend that you run this in compressed mode rather than dynamic mode. Dynamic mode means that all the very loud sounds stay very loud, so explosions and gunshots and stuff, and quiet sounds stay very, very quiet. What this means is that if you have footsteps around you that are really, really quiet, you're going to have to turn your volume up, which is fine until you start getting shot and you get tinnitus in your ears, which isn't great. Compressed, what that does is it brings the loud volumes down a bit and it brings the quiet volumes up a bit. So you compress the overall audio range, and it means that all the sounds are mixed more evenly. This is a no-brainer to have on. You can hear the quiet stuff a bit better, and you can also not have your ears blown out by explosions, maybe even people shouting down your ears. I don't know if that's affected by this, the voice chat, but definitely put this on compressed mode. There's things about subtitles in here, your communication, nothing in here that I really care too much about. Spartan chatter's cool, that players will automatically call events out during multiplayer. I keep all this stuff on at the moment because it's cool, and I like the commentator and stuff calling out stuff, so I'm going to keep it on. UI, the key things in here I'd recommend you have your HUD opacity on 1, and obviously your HUD on so that you can see all your stuff at the bottom, like your ammo and stuff like that. And having it set to 1 opacity means that it's in bold, you don't miss it, and it means that you can get that you can get all the information you need when you need it. Other things, you might want to turn off tips and tutorials when you understand the game fully. I'm still learning the game, so they're useful to have on for me. You've got an FPS counter in your network stats in here. I currently got the FPS counter off because I've got my Steam FPS counter on the top left, but network statistics is always useful. You can see if your ping starts going up and if you need to go sort out your router. So that appears in the top right here. It's 0 at the moment because I'm just in a little custom game. Outlines and colors, you can set them here. As long as your enemy UI color it stands out. I think the standard red that the game gives you, the salmon, is honestly good for me, even as being someone who's colorblind. So it's up to you if you want them on or off. You can choose if you show like names or gamer tags or service tags and stuff. There's a lot of different settings here. UI visual effects, keep all of these off. We don't want any random clutter keeping us from seeing what is on our UI, especially things like parallax. So parallax is where if you look round, the stuff moves left and right. It's kind of cool, it's kind of immersive, but it means it might take that extra second to just see something which you need to see. So yeah, I'd keep that off. Everything else in here, not that useful anyway. And then accessibility covers some of the stuff we've already talked about. It actually covers things like the visuals and stuff, and some of the sensory stuff from the video settings. So really nothing in here to cover. And anyway, guys, that is all the settings for Halo Infinite. A very in-depth video. I actually watched some other people make videos about the settings, and they were just going through and saying, yeah, put all these things on low. And then people were like, well, what does all these settings mean? How much do they affect your FPS? Like, why are we doing this? When I make these settings videos, I like to explain to you guys why I'm doing it so that you're not running around like headless chickens. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching the video today. If you are enjoying Halo Infinite and want to get the best out of the game, then hopefully this has been enjoyable for you. If it has, then make sure, as I said before, you subscribe for more videos coming very soon. Anyway, guys, it's been FourEyes or Dave here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye.